I'll never forget this night everything finally broke inside me. It was my birthday, and my parents had planned a little family surprise. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a simple dinner, maybe a cake, maybe just a moment where I felt like I mattered. But instead, I watched my sister walk outside into the driveway, where a shiny BMW sat with a giant red bow on top. My parents clapped, laughed, and cheered as she squealed and hugged them. I stood there, frozen, as my mom pressed a set of keys into her hand, like she was crowning a queen. My dad pulled out his phone to record the moment, proudly saying, "You deserve this, sweetheart. You've always made us proud." And then everyone turned to me. I was holding my breath, waiting. Surely they hadn't forgotten me, right? Surely I had something too, even if it wasn't as grand. My mom reached into her purse, walked over, and with a smile that felt rehearsed, handed me a card. Inside was 2 crumpled dollar bills. $2. The room went quiet, like even the walls knew how cruel this was. My sister tried to cover her laugh, but I saw the smirk tugging at her lips. My father patted me on the back, as if that tiny gesture erased the years of favoritism, the endless comparisons, the way I was always the afterthought. I forced a smile because what else could I do? If I cried, they'd call me dramatic. If I got angry, I'd be labeled ungrateful. So I slipped the card into my pocket and whispered a quiet, "Thank you." But inside, something shattered. That night, as my sister took her BMW for a victory lap around the neighborhood, my parents gushed about how responsible she was, how she deserved nice things. No one mentioned me, not once. I sat at the dinner table, staring at the half-melted cake with my name misspelled on it, and I knew I didn't belong there anymore. By midnight, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to spend another second waiting for their approval, waiting for scraps of love they'd never give me. At 2 a.m., I quietly packed my bag. No note, no goodbye, just silence. Before I stepped out the door, I blocked their numbers from my phone. I didn't want to hear excuses, guilt trips, or fake apologies. They had shown me my worth in their eyes. $2. And with that, I walked out into the night, leaving behind the house where I was never truly seen, never truly valued. It was the first moment in my life that felt like freedom, even though I had no idea where I was going next. The air outside that night felt different, cold but liberating. For the first time, there was no ceiling over me that reminded me of what I didn't have. No footsteps in the hallway reminding me I was less loved than my sister. Just the quiet of the streets and the distant hum of her BMW's engine echoing like a cruel reminder of everything I had left behind. I didn't have a plan. No money saved, just the clothes in my backpack, my phone, and the 2 crumpled dollars my parents had shoved into my hands like a joke. At first, fear gripped me. Where would I sleep? How would I eat? But then, a louder thought cut through the panic. Anything is better than being invisible in my own family. I walked for hours, my shoes wearing thin against the concrete, until I found myself sitting outside a 24-hour diner. The neon lights flickered above me, buzzing faintly in the silence of the night. I slipped inside, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a cup of black coffee, and sat in the corner booth, staring at the steam rising from the cup. That's when it hit me. I had 2 choices. I could crumble under the weight of what my parents had done to me, or I could let this betrayal become the fire that pushed me forward. I decided that night, if they saw me as worthless, then I would build a life that proved just how wrong they were. The first weeks were brutal. I crashed on couches of acquaintances, sometimes slept in the bus station when I had nowhere to go. I took every odd job I could find, waiting tables, cleaning offices at night, even handing out flyers on the street. It was exhausting, humiliating at times, but it was also mine. Nobody could take away the sweat from my own brow. And slowly, something began to shift. While my sister flaunted her new BMW on social media, posting selfies with hashtags about being blessed, I was learning what real independence felt like. I was no longer the forgotten child waiting for approval. I was building something on my own terms, even if it was messy, even if it was hard. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, curled up in the corner of a borrowed couch. But there were also mornings when I woke up with a strange new feeling. Pride. Pride that I had chosen myself over the crumbs of affection my parents tossed my way. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But every day I survived on my own was another day I grew stronger. Another day I put distance between the girl who was handed $2 and the woman I was becoming, someone who would never again let anyone decide her worth. It's funny how life opens doors when you're desperate enough to knock on all of them. One morning, after another long night of cleaning offices, I spotted a small sign taped to the window of a bookstore. Help. Wanted. I pushed the door open, my clothes wrinkled, my eyes tired. The owner, a kind older woman named Mrs. Green, looked me up and down but didn't flinch at the exhaustion on my face. She simply asked, "Can you show up on time?" I nodded. That was it. I had a job. It wasn't glamorous. Stocking shelves, sweeping floors, helping customers find the right novels. But inside that little bookstore, something changed. For the first time, someone valued me for showing up, for working hard, for being reliable. Mrs. Green even slipped me sandwiches during my shifts, whispering, "You look like you could use a good meal." With every paycheck, I saved a little. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I stopped thinking about the BMW with the red bow in my parents' driveway. I stopped replaying the moment they handed me $2 while the cameras flashed for my sister. Instead, I focused on what I could build with my own hands. The bookstore became more than a job. It became my classroom. Between restocking shelves, I devoured books about self-improvement, business, and resilience. Stories of people who started with nothing and built empires from the ground up lit a fire in me. If they could do it, why couldn't I? My parents and sister still didn't call. They didn't text. In their minds, I had probably vanished, the difficult child who had finally disappeared from their perfect family photos. But I didn't care anymore. Their silence was my freedom. After a year of juggling jobs and saving every penny, I had enough to rent my own tiny studio apartment, 4 cracked walls, a squeaky mattress, and a hot plate for cooking. But it was mine. No one could take it from me. I taped a piece of paper to the wall that read, "One day, they'll regret underestimating me." I worked mornings at the bookstore and evenings at a coffee shop, tucking away savings dollar by dollar. And when exhaustion tempted me to quit, I reminded myself of that red bow on my sister's BMW. That moment of humiliation became my fuel. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing to create a life so big, so undeniable, that the same people who discarded me would one day have no choice but to see me. And deep down, I knew that day was coming. The funny thing about struggle is that it teaches you to notice opportunities other people overlook. While most of my coworkers at the coffee shop complained about long shifts, I paid attention to every detail, how the business ran, how customers reacted, how small decisions added up. One night, while cleaning up after a late rush, the manager handed me a stack of receipts and sighed, "Wish someone cared enough to fix all these mistakes." We lose hundreds a week. Hundreds? That was a fortune to me back then. I stayed up until sunrise, studying everything I could about bookkeeping and inventory. Within a month, I presented him with a system that saved the cafe money. He gave me a raise. And more importantly, confidence. That tiny raise wasn't just extra cash, it was proof that I could create value, not just trade time for a paycheck. I started devouring books about entrepreneurship, listening to business podcasts, and writing down every idea that sparked in my head. The same fire that once fueled my anger at my parents was now fueling my hunger for independence. I experimented with small side hustles, reselling thrifted clothes online, offering to tutor high school kids, even walking dogs for busy families in the neighborhood. Every extra dollar I earned went into savings. I wasn't just saving for survival anymore. I was building capital. And then, one day, my big break found me. A regular at the bookstore, a young woman named Emily, told me she wanted to start an online business but didn't know where to begin. I hesitated at first. Who was I to help? But then I remembered the systems I had created at the cafe, the late nights of research, the pages of notes I had filled with business ideas. I offered to help her set up her online store. What started as a favor turned into a partnership. Emily paid me for my time, and soon, word spread. A few referrals later, I was consulting with small business owners on weekends, helping them set up their online shops and manage their products. I was finally using my brain, not just my hands, to build something real. My bank account began to grow, not fast, not glamorous, but steady. And with each deposit, I felt the chains of my past loosen. The girl who had been handed 2 crumpled dollars was becoming a woman who could stand on her own, who could say, "I did this myself." And yet, in the back of my mind, I still pictured that BMW with its red bow, my sister posing in the driveway while my parents clapped. I no longer wanted the car. I wanted something far greater. I wanted the power to look them in the eye one day and know they needed me more than I ever needed them. And deep down, I sensed that day was drawing closer. Success doesn't arrive with a trumpet blast. It creeps in quietly, disguised as small wins that slowly stack into something unstoppable. By my mid-20s, I was no longer the broke barista scraping together rent. I had built a small consulting business, helping dozens of local shops move online. From clothing boutiques to mom-and-pop bakeries, my strategies helped them attract customers far beyond our town. In return, I wasn't just earning, I was thriving. For the first time in my life, I bought something brand new with my own money. A sleek, modest car. No red bow, no parents handing me the keys. Just me, signing the papers with my hard-earned cash. Driving it off the lot felt better than any gift ever could. But while my world expanded, my family's picture-perfect life began to crack. My sister, the one who got the BMW, had driven it like a toy. By the time she hit her mid-20s, the car was beaten down, and so was she. She had never learned to earn her own way. Every time something went wrong, she ran back to my parents for money. And my parents? The golden image of financial stability they'd always bragged about started to crumble. Dad's job was downsized. Mom's side projects weren't bringing in enough, and the debts from their lavish lifestyle were catching up. I remember the first time Mom called me, not to scold me, not to dismiss me, but to ask for advice. She tried to hide it in casual conversation. "So, honey, you've always been good with, saving money and all that. What do you think we should do about this loan we took out?" For a moment, I sat there in silence, letting the irony wash over me. The same woman who once shoved $2 into my hand and told me to make it stretch was now asking me how to handle thousands. I didn't gloat, not yet. But inside I felt something shift. For the first time, they weren't holding all the power. Meanwhile, my business was exploding. Social media had become my best friend. Clients left glowing reviews, tagging me in posts about how I'd transformed their shops. Soon, bigger companies began reaching out, offering contracts worth more than I'd ever dreamed of. I upgraded from my tiny apartment to a beautiful downtown loft. I traveled to conferences, met mentors who poured into me, and invested in myself in ways my parents never could have imagined. Every step forward was a reminder. I had built this, alone. But I also knew my family's situation was worsening. Their house, the one they had always flaunted as a symbol of success, was edging closer to foreclosure. My sister, so used to luxury, was struggling with credit card debt. The pedestal they had once placed her on was starting to wobble. And as much as I hated to admit it, I could sense the universe setting up the moment I had been waiting for. The day when the roles would finally reverse. The call came late one night. My mom's voice trembled, not with anger this time, but desperation. We might lose the house, she admitted. Your father's out of work and your sister, well, you know how she is. We just need some help. For years, I had begged them to see me, to treat me as more than the forgotten daughter with $2 in her pocket. But now, when their empire was crumbling, I was suddenly the answer to their problems. I thought about every birthday they'd ignored, every time they had chosen my sister's comfort over my dignity. I thought about that BMW with the red bow, and the $2 pressed into my hand. And I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't always mean access. So, at 2 a.m., I made my decision. I blocked their numbers. I wasn't cruel. I didn't wish them harm. But I owed it to myself to finally choose me. As the city lights glowed outside my loft window, I whispered to the girl I once was, the girl they forgot. They may have overlooked you, but you built yourself into someone they'll never forget.